Imagine a world where, all at once, every single person on the planet loses their cell phone. The scene unfolds like the opening of an apocalyptic film. Mass confusion, panic in the streets, and a sudden, overwhelming silence as notification dings and text message pings disappear into thin air. The impact would be both hilarious and catastrophic, like a giant global comedy of errors with serious consequences. But before we get carried away envisioning people wandering aimlessly, clutching their phantom phones, let's dive into what would really happen if this wild scenario came true. First, let's talk about the immediate communication crisis. In a world that thrives on real-time communication, losing cell phones overnight would be like trying to drive a car without a steering wheel. Businesses, families, emergency services, all of them rely on instant messaging and phone calls. Without our phones, the first wave of chaos would hit emergency response systems. Imagine paramedics trying to coordinate without mobile dispatch systems or firefighters unable to get updates on evolving situations. Traffic accidents could become even more dangerous, as drivers have no way to call for help. In fact, there would probably be a spike in accidents just from people looking dazed and confused, as if their sense of direction had been snatched away along with their Google Maps app. And speaking of directions, GPS would be another major casualty. We've all become so dependent on those soothing, robotic voices guiding us through city streets and highway exits. Without them, the world would turn into a maze, especially for delivery drivers and everyday commuters who haven't used a paper map since they were featured in pirate movies. Ride-sharing apps like Uber and Lyft? Gone. Delivery services like DoorDash? Finished. Even getting from point A to point B would become a daily adventure, a high-stakes game where left and right feel more like abstract concepts. Road rage might hit an all-time high as drivers attempt to navigate old-school, unfolding maps the size of bedsheets. Now, let's add a bit of humor to the psychological fallout. For the first time in decades, people would have to make eye contact at bus stops. Imagine the awkwardness as strangers realize they can't escape into their digital worlds. Public transport would become a silent, staring contest between confused commuters. Those who used to scroll through memes on Instagram during their morning commute would now be forced to, well, look out the window or, gasp, strike up conversations. As scary as it sounds, we'd actually have to engage with each other. But humor aside, the psychological impact would be real. For many, smartphones are more than just a convenience. They're a safety net, a constant source of connection and comfort. Losing this digital lifeline could trigger widespread anxiety. Researchers have long warned about our dependency on these devices. The term nomophobia, which stands for no mobile phone phobia, describes the panic we feel when separated from our phones. We use them to combat boredom, ward off loneliness, and even track our mental health. Take that away, and we're left with a society going through collective withdrawal, complete with nervous tics and phantom vibrations, as if our pockets are haunted by the ghosts of notifications past. But hey, not all hope is lost. There would be some unintended comedic moments, like people trying to hail cabs with nothing but their sheer desperation. Offices would descend into mild hysteria as employees rediscover how to send memos the old-fashioned way, on paper, with pens, like it's 1995. Meetings would have to be scheduled through, brace yourselves, actual face-to-face conversations. It would be a steep learning curve, but maybe a humorous one, as CEOs fumble around like deer in the headlights, realizing their productivity tools are now useless hunks of plastic. Now, let's zoom out and look at the global economy. Mobile phones are at the heart of commerce and productivity, from billion-dollar trades executed with the flick of a finger to gig economy workers hustling through app notifications. Take that away, and we're talking about billions of dollars in lost productivity overnight. Stock markets would suffer because traders can no longer receive updates in real time. Imagine Wall Street traders running around with ticker tape machines, desperately trying to process the market's ups and downs while clutching their heads in disbelief. Panic would set in, and financial analysts would be scrambling to come up with new, analog methods to keep the economy moving. The gig economy would collapse. No more food delivery, ride-sharing, or freelance apps. People might even, get ready for this, have to start cooking meals at home again. Speaking of cooking, we can't forget about the social impact of losing cell phones. In our modern age, they're the glue holding friendships and relationships together. Long-distance couples rely on video calls. Friends share every mundane and hilarious moment through memes and texts. Take that away, and some relationships could suffer. Think about it. No more spontaneous texts that say, "thinking of you," or midnight FaceTime calls with your best friend. On the flip side, family dinners might actually be dinners again, instead of 5 people sitting in silence while swiping through TikTok. But wait, there's more. How about the impact on health and fitness? Fitness enthusiasts have built entire routines around health tracking apps, step counters, and reminders to stay hydrated. Losing that digital assistant would leave many feeling aimless, and people with chronic health conditions who use apps to track medication schedules would be at risk. Even doctors use smartphones to check medical references and communicate with other healthcare providers. Hospitals would face chaos as they lose mobile communication lines, relying instead on pagers and landlines, creating inefficiencies that could delay patient care. Education wouldn't be spared either. Modern classrooms are designed around digital learning, with students using apps for assignments, research, and even taking tests. Suddenly, schools would have to revert to traditional teaching methods, complete with chalkboards and handouts. Younger students, who have never known life without a tablet or smartphone, would struggle to adapt. Imagine the chaos as teachers scramble to reorganize lesson plans and students suddenly realize they have to take notes by hand. And then, there's the entertainment factor. Smartphones have revolutionized how we consume content, from streaming movies to watching viral TikTok trends. With just a tap, we're instantly transported into a world of memes, YouTube rabbit holes, and the never-ending stream of content that keeps us entertained 24/7. Take that away, and our entertainment landscape would suddenly look very different. Imagine trying to watch the latest blockbuster movie not on your phone, but maybe on an old DVD player, or worse, having to visit a video rental store, if those even still exist. People would have to dust off their old DVD collections, or, for those who were more committed to digital, maybe break out their collection of forgotten Blu-rays. Streaming services like Netflix and Hulu would see a dramatic dip in usage, and binge-watching sessions would come to a screeching halt. TikTok trends, which come and go at lightning speed, would suddenly be frozen in time. Influencers who make a living by capturing every moment of their day would find themselves in a bizarre and uncomfortable silence. The phrase, "doing it for the gram," would become an ancient relic of a bygone era, replaced perhaps by "doing it for fun," as people would need to find reasons to do things other than chasing likes. Those short, viral dance challenges? Now they'd have to be done just for the enjoyment of friends and family, who would likely be bewildered, but at least get a front-row seat to the performance. Even traditional media outlets that rely heavily on social media to share news and articles would have to revert to older ways of engaging audiences, maybe even printing more physical newspapers, like the good old days. Social gatherings would undergo a massive shift. Without the constant distraction of notifications and scrolling, people might have to actually engage with each other. At parties, instead of everyone sitting in a circle, heads down, glued to their phones, there could be a revival of old-school party games. Picture groups of friends gathering around for intense matches of charades or playing card games like Uno or poker. Board games would make a dramatic comeback, and the strategy of Monopoly would once again test friendships, this time without the interruption of someone checking their Instagram feed. Families might have to learn to entertain each other, maybe even sharing stories, telling jokes, or rediscovering the joy of a simple conversation without the pressure of capturing it all on Snapchat. For younger generations who have grown up in the digital age, the idea of entertainment without smartphones would feel almost prehistoric. Kids and teens who are used to scrolling endlessly through YouTube shorts would have to get creative. Backyard sports, hide and seek, and classic games like tag could see a resurgence. Playground dynamics would change as kids invent new ways to have fun that don't involve downloading apps. Meanwhile, parents who are used to giving their children tablets to keep them occupied would have to think of more hands-on activities. Maybe more kids would start learning how to ride bikes, climb trees, or pick up new hobbies like painting or crafting. Let's not forget about the impact on gaming culture. Mobile gaming has become a massive industry, with millions of people around the world playing games like Clash of Clans, PUBG Mobile, or Pokemon Go. Without smartphones, casual gaming would take a huge hit. Gamers would have to turn back to consoles and PCs for their dose of digital adventure. Remember when you'd have to physically gather friends in the same room to play multiplayer games on one screen? That might make a nostalgic return, leading to actual face-to-face competition and laughter, instead of anonymous matches with strangers online. It could be a fun blast from the past, but for many, the adjustment would be jarring. Streaming and content creation, industries that are largely driven by smartphones, would also have to adapt. Vloggers, content creators, and Instagram models would find their careers disrupted overnight. Travel influencers, known for their scenic shots and glamorous selfies from around the globe, would have to find other ways to share their adventures, maybe through storytelling or writing. Food bloggers could reinvent themselves as in-person food critics, visiting restaurants and writing reviews like the critics of old. Influencers might even have to stage events where their followers could meet them in real life, creating a new kind of personal engagement. It would be an ironic twist for a generation that has built digital empires to suddenly be forced into a world where their influence must exist offline. Musicians and artists who rely on platforms like Spotify, SoundCloud, or Instagram to share their work would face challenges too. Without smartphone streaming, there could be a revival of live performances, with more street musicians and spontaneous gigs popping up in city squares. Artists who usually post their work online might organize art shows or exhibit their work in local galleries, making the experience of viewing art much more tactile and immersive. But perhaps the most fascinating social experiment of all would be seeing how people use their newfound free time. Without the easy dopamine hits from endless scrolling, people might explore hobbies they'd always put off, learning to cook, trying their hand at gardening, or even writing that novel they'd been dreaming of. The world might get a bit quieter, but also richer in human interactions. And who knows? Maybe we'd even discover that life without smartphones, while inconvenient and challenging, offers moments of genuine connection and creativity that we've been missing. Or maybe we'd just sit there, stunned, waiting for the day when our glowing screens return to save us from our analog boredom. Either way, it would be a bizarre, eye-opening adventure.